Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another episode here at WILDMAN Lifts. I'm your host, WILDMAN. Now, for a lot of you that have been asking, yes, this is actually not my sunglasses. These are my wife's sunglasses. And that's because I can't seem to locate my sunglasses. I always have them go missing, and it's really not my fault, I promise. So I did temporarily borrow my wife's sunglasses. Now for tonight's episode, I thought I would explain the difference between all the different kinds of ground to overhead movements that are out there. Now you've been watching my channel long enough, you know that I'm constantly doing the continental clean and press, where you start from the ground and you basically work that bar up your body, which is usually to your midsection. You do a mini power clean and then you press it overhead. And this is with a barbell or with an axle bar. Barbells are a lot easier to do this with because, frankly, they're made to be lifted. The ends rotate, the diameter of the bar is a lot smaller to get your hand all the way around, and it has knurling. And the fact that it kind of whips a little bit as you're going up makes it a lot easier to time it and to get it overhead. Versus with an axle bar is extremely hard to get over your head because it's hard to break from the ground because it's so stiff. It doesn't whip, it doesn't do anything. It's 2 inches in diameter usually, which is like the size of a Coke can. So you can't get your hands all the way around it. And it doesn't have any knurling and the ends do not rotate. So it's pretty much a giant pipe. And you stick the weights on the end of it and you have to work it up your body. Probably not the funnest movement to do, especially when you're working up your body, because it is a fight, especially when you have to stop it midway in order to get ready to mini power clean it to your shoulders. And then to have that thing sit on your carotid artery to press it overhead is not an easy task to do. But the reason why I do it is because of 2 reasons. The first reason is because this is what strongmen do. If you watch any strongman competition, typically the events are axle from ground to overhead. And it's usually done in a continental clean and press style versus like an Olympic weightlifting style, because you are unable to get any momentum or build any explosive power when you're trying to clean that from your hips to your shoulders. So in order to get better at the strongman movements, you have to do the strongman movements. So that's why I do it. But the second reason is really my personal opinion, so please don't get mad at me. But in my personal opinion, the continental clean and press builds more practical strength than any other ground to overhead movement that I can think of. Just to kind of break down or I guess demonstrate and show you what kind of other movements there are, here are some examples. So the first one is called the Olympic snatch, okay? And the second one is called the Olympic clean. Now, let's just take the Olympic clean, for example. There's 3 types of ways that you can do the clean. The first is called the muscle clean, where you take it from the ground and you're just strong enough to be able to get it from the ground and get it directly to your shoulders. That's called the muscle clean. The second one is when the weight gets a little bit heavier and you have to clean it from your hips and then catch it, but you kind of have to do like a quarter squat a little bit just to catch it on your shoulders before you could stand it up. And the third clean is what we would call a full Olympic clean, right? Which is where you take it from the ground, you clean it, and then you catch it on your shoulders, but you squat all the way down into a front squat. And you basically catch that bar at the bottom of a front squat, and then you front squat it up to your shoulders at the starting position where you're gonna press it overhead. So those are the 3 types of Olympic cleans. And likewise, there's also 3 kinds of Olympic snatch as well. The first one is a muscle snatch, which is the same thing as a muscle clean. You're just able to get it from A to B, and you're able to just fluidly move through that without having to stop at all or buck it up from your hips. The second one is called the power snatch, where you have to do a little bit of a quarter squat in order to catch that bar, and then you bring it up to the top. And the third one is the full Olympic snatch, which basically you catch it like you're doing in an overhead squat, where you buck it from your hips, you catch it in the air, but you're down and you catch it at the very bottom of the lift, and then you basically overhead squat that sucker up to the top. And that is the 3 kinds of Olympic snatch. Now you could see in all those examples that I was using, I was doing the continental clean and press that day. And so the reason why I was using the axle bar was because I had that implement out. But any Olympic weightlifter can tell you that, let's just say an Olympic weightlifter can snatch 300 pounds and can overhead clean and press a 400-pound barbell. Well, they'll be able to admit to you that if they tried to do that with an axle bar, it would just slip right out of their hands. because they use a hook grip where they put their thumbs inside the barbell and then they wrap their fingers over it to give them a secure grip. You're unable to do that with an axle bar because it's just too thick. And so that requires a lot of grip strength, which is why a lot of strongmen even can't overhand get it to their shoulders. They have to use a mixed grip like they do in a deadlift and work it up their body like that, which I hate doing because that's actually how I popped my left bicep off. And it's a common injury with strongmen on the continental clean and press to pop their biceps when using the mixed grip. And it's whatever hand is supinated because it's just too much pressure for that little tendon to hold that muscle to the bone. Now, Olympic weightlifting was popularized by CrossFit. And Olympic weightlifters might be mad at me for saying that, but it's absolutely true. Nobody really cared about Olympic weightlifting except for Olympians. And if we were going to win the gold against some other country. But really, CrossFit is the one that made it popular because they used all 6 kinds of Olympic weight movements, like I showed you earlier, to make workouts fun. You could use it for conditioning. It does build a little bit of strength that's practical. But in my opinion, it's not the best way to do it. I feel like that the best way to build overhead strength and practical strength all around is to be able to do it with an implement that's not made to be lifted and to have to work that up your body. Because trust me, it takes a lot of grit, a lot of mindset, and just a lot of strength to get it up overhead in that kind of fashion versus a very technical way of doing it, which is to only use a barbell and only get good at lifting with the barbell. I don't believe that it'll carry over great into other strength aspects. When I talk to Olympic weightlifters, they actually agree with me because they are unable to do anything but Olympic weightlift. If you ask them to push something or pull something, they just don't have the raw strength or talent to move in those horizontal planes. But vertical planes, they're very strong, but not in horizontal planes of pushing and pulling. And that really comes from strongman. And doing the continental clean and press absolutely carries over into those horizontal planes. This is why I also like to lift with stones, because stones are very hard to lift. They're not made to be lifted, especially natural stones. And you kind of have to use your brain and you have to use what feels good in order to get it to your shoulder. And most cultures throughout history have always done that. And so since that is part of history to determine somebody's strength, I believe that the axial continental clean and press is just another testament to prove somebody's strength, not just from the overhead position, but from all positions, since they have to get it from the ground and work it up to their shoulders. I really appreciate everybody stopping by, and I hope that we learned something new tonight. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.